Okay, dokie. Well, welcome to our very last study of Micah. Study number 5.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
We
We
made it.
finished. I know we did. And this is just verses Micah chapter 7, verses 7 to 20.
Yeah, 35.
Yeah. And we picked one question. Do you want to read the question?
Yeah. So I wrote it from the thing that you sent. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do you have like the actual question?
No. I'm just sending
I think I wrote it
photos,
well. I'm just gonna read
right?
it.
It's so crazy how like I just take photos and then just send it to you
Oh, you just send
this
it.
whole time.
Okay. So here's the question. The penitent city speaks in verses 7 to 10, and the prophet responds to them and to God on their behalf. In what respect does the sinful city take the right course in chapter 7? And on what promises does she rest her case? Yeah. And what promise does she receive? So it's a loaded question,
Mm-hmm.
but breaking it down, it's just talking about, so I think there are two parts, like the 7 to 10, the prophet, 11 to 13, the prophet responds to the people of Jerusalem. And then I think from 14 to 20, he sort of pleads to God on their behalf. So it's asking us how does the sinful city make things right, and then
Mm.
what promises does she rest her case, and what promise does she receive from all
Mm-hmm.
of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I hope
and
that's
then they can also,
understandable.
yeah, they
Yeah.
can go back to the other study because it was, it talks about how what sort of injustices were happening in the city.
Mhm. Yeah.
And they can listen back to the past studies that we did, because it mainly focuses on that.
Yeah,
So, so
that's true.
now you're saying like what would a redeemed city look like, right? I feel like
Yeah,
that's
that's
like the
basically what it's
ending.
saying. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hmm. So I think that first of all, I noticed that in chapter 9 it says, I mean in verse 9 it says, I'll bear the indignation of the Lord because I have sinned against him. So first of all, they're
Mm,
accepting that they sinned. I think that's always the
mm,
first step. It's accepting that, okay, we did wrong, and now we're ready for whatever comes. It's God's wrath in this case is sort of inevitable. So, but then
yeah.
at the end of it, there's going to be vindication. He's not just going to punish them, but he's also going to redeem them. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of what stood out to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's the acceptance and knowing that it's going to be okay in the end. But
Mm-hmm.
we have to go through, all of, I mean, what we have basically brought on ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very interesting. That's a very, very interesting starting point. That there has to be an acceptance first. I think
Yeah.
it's very also very applicable in our daily lives, right? Like before restoration happens, like there has to be an acceptance of not just what others have done wrong to you, but also like what have I done wrong?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we don't look at that. We don't look at things from that perspective. It's always, who's doing wrong, like to
Yeah.
me, not. Yeah.
Who is doing wrong and another party is absolutely right. So then we're just given, people were given a choice to just decide on good versus bad. Very
Hmm.
movie-ish.
Yeah.
It's Hollywood. It's been influencing the way we think.
I know. I'm trying to think of this term in psychology for this. I can't for the life of me remember what it's called. But I learned something in
Really?
psychology about this, like thinking that people are always bad and you're always insane. But I
Yeah.
can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And the funny
yeah,
part is that sometimes we use that lens when we read the word. Oh yeah, the good one is like that's the Bible is talking about me.
that is so
And
true.
then they are the enemy,
And they are the bad guys. Yeah,
right?
that's so true.
And it,
Like,
yeah,
I'll
we
never
picked
do that. Yeah, can never be me.
yeah, we picked it up from just, we picked it up on our way of thinking. Like there's only good and bad. And then if
Hmm.
I'm good, then they must be bad, you know,
Yeah,
without realizing that we are all in the same level of, in God's eyes, we're all guilty. So
hmm,
that's a very good point when you said at the beginning, there has to be some acceptance first. Like,
yeah,
this group of people acknowledge, man, I have fallen. And I sat in darkness, and now I must endure the Lord's fury, for I have sinned against him.
yeah,
Wow. I think that's huge. That's a huge starting point in terms of
yeah,
restoration.
yeah. And I think that sort of, well, that answers the part that says, well, for me, I think in what respects does the sinful city take the right course? And I think
Mm,
that's the way to start, because at first they were not even realizing that they were doing wrong. They were doing all these things, whereas God was expecting something else. They were giving off a tree and all of that stuff, but God just wanted their hearts and wanted them to obey Him and act right. But
mm-hmm.
now it's like they've come to a realization that, okay, we've actually offended God.
Yeah,
So
and they were
I
part of
think
the whole system, the whole injustice
mm-hmm.
system that were happening during this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I
what
wish it's so easy though in
promises?
reality. I wish it's so easy in reality to come into that realization, right?
Yeah, I know.
But this is a good principle. I mean, the Bible is telling us how a restored city would look like. And
Yeah,
starting point that you pointed out for me is huge, you know, acceptance and
yeah.
acknowledgement.
And in net, it expands one of the things. So it says that Jerusalem declares her confidence from verse 8 to 10, and she's
Mm,
assured that she will indeed be vindicated.
mm,
So I think that it was sort of what we just talked about earlier on. It's that assurance that in the end,
mm-hmm,
things are going to turn around,
mm-hmm.
and it's that journey that I must take. I think sometimes for me personally, you just want to get from point A to point B, right? All
Yeah,
of that in between stuff, it's just not what you want.
yeah.
But
Get me out of this in between.
it's like, okay, you know
Mm-hmm.
we got to do this no matter how
Right.
dusty and tiring. We have to walk this road.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm curious when you said about God will vindicate me. What verse is that?
Oh, that um so that was 11, but then I read it on net, and then that was their explanation. So I don't think it
Mm.
was explicitly written in there, but let me see.
Yeah, I don't think I have it on NET.
Shall be decreed by fire in that day.
But I feel like I've heard that, several times. I'm just hearing that, God will vindicate. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what does that phrase mean?
And I shall behold his righteousness. So yeah. So I think I just saw it in nets. It was not really It was
Mm.
not part of the verse. Yeah, I think you were explaining from 8 to 10 that whole
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
I'm thinking, okay, so a vindication, the act of something that provides evidence or support for a claim or argument. Something that provide provides evidence or support for a claim. So maybe are you are you saying that, like they're
Which
holding on to a specific promise that God has spoken to them?
oh, on what promises does she rest her case? I think that's towards the end
Mm, yeah.
when he will again he will have compassion on us.
Mm-hmm.
He'll that's 19. He'll subdue
Oh,
our iniquities. And then it talks
right.
about he'll perform the truths to Jacob and Abraham and mercy to Abraham. So it's like all those promises that he made to Jacob and Abraham, he's going to carry them out.
Right. Despite their, despite the sinfulness and the rebellion,
Yeah.
right? So they're holding on to the evidence or of the promise in to them that they will be restored
Mm-hmm.
because of God's faithfulness, in keeping his promise.
Yeah.
Well, the other part that, I wanted to um share or sort of struck me in terms of the restoration in verse 12. How it says here, in that day people will come to you from Assyria as far as Egypt, from Egypt as far as the Euphrates River. I mean, people from these countries that oppress the nation of Israel will come to
Will come
God.
to.
You
Yeah.
know, like they are part of the restoration, because in verse 18 it said, "Who is God like you, who forgives sin and pardons the rebellion?" Like it's for both, for those who
Yeah.
commit sin and pardon those who committed rebellion.
Yeah. That's that. Oh,
So yeah, that is true. Like, who is God like you, who thinks about not just those, who, um, those who rebel, but also who pardons those who did wrong, and then
yeah, and tormented his
forgives.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what it's showing me is this picture of, God's God's restoration involves both, everybody is included.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
you don't have to
It's
be
not
just a
just for
victim.
one particular,
Yeah,
yeah,
not just,
group.
let's say, the
Mhm.
victim, but also those who were part of the corrupt, system that were
Mhm.
happening during that time. But that's like part of this
Right.
restoration process. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And then we'll have, who does not stay angry forever, but delights in showing loyal love, who will once again have mercy on us. Oh man,
I
that's a key
know.
promise.
He will not remain angry forever. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then, oh, I think I wrote this part down where it says, I will, well, here it says, according to the days of the coming out of the land of Egypt,
Hmm.
will I show unto him marvelous things. So it's basically saying, I'll keep showing you miraculous things. I'll do miraculous things even after all of this.
Mm.
And likens it to all those miracles he performed when he was bringing them out of Egypt.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so it's just like that promise to, continue taking care of them and looking out for them.
Right.
Um, yeah, like into the wilderness, because it's like they're going into exile, right, at this point, and that's sort of a wilderness. They don't know what's going to happen, but in all of this, he's still going to be there for
Mm-hmm.
them and watching out for them.
Yeah, and this is important to look, to hold on to, especially when all of your circumstances is, telling you differently, right? Like it's hard to look around you and then see it very depressing, like this is not what's happening right now, let's say, But then if we look in, if we look to his loyal love and his compassion and his, mercy, that's something that we can hold on to in the future, that he still, in the end, he still wants, I mean, in the end, God is still, uh God promises restoration,
Yeah.
you know. And I think for especially if you're feeling, not feeling, but especially if you're experiencing, injustices, and you're seeing all these like corrupt practices, like God one day
Yeah.
you will restore,
Yep.
restore both the victim and those who are part of the corrupt practices. I think
Yeah.
for me that's
Yeah, but
important.
I know, because it's easy to say, yeah, I want those people punished, but forgetting that for those people, I guess I've never even thought of that, like for things to be restored, like you said,
Mm-hmm,
everyone needs to come together, including the perpetrators and then it won't
mm-hmm,
work. God can't restore if it's not, there's no unity. So,
mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yes, and that's not how it
it's kind of
works
hard
in
to think
his.
about though, but
But also it brings us into a reality, because here, initially in Micah, we were surprised that those who were actually part of the corrupt practices were the people that God called to be his people, right?
The religious leaders, yeah,
Yeah, but
maybe,
then at the early, in like in first in Exodus, we know they're the oppressed people. And then in Micah, it seems like they're reversed. They're the ones in like in
yeah,
leadership
they're the
position
ones,
now. Yeah,
right,
and so now the
oppressing
victim,
people.
yes, the victim becomes the oppressor. It's almost like a cycle. So if it's easy for us to think I'm always going to be forever a victim, so I would always side of the victim. But knowing like the flaws of men, we can become the oppressor, because especially if we're not healed, and if we're not healed when we were the victim, so now we want to like avenge, you know. So now we're
Yeah,
part of this cycle, that the victim becomes the oppressor. It's just like a cycle that we're,
right.
you
And it's a thing
know.
of power. Power shifts. Sometimes power is not always a one person or one group. And it's like you never know you're evil until power is in your hands. Like,
Yes,
what do I do now? All this power.
exactly. And then if we're bringing in our baggage from our, past hurt,
Mm,
then we're going to be, oh yeah, those who oppress me, now it's my turn for them to oppress them because they did this
yeah,
to me, or you know and it's just
yeah,
never ending cycle. So I think Micah is showing us, like, you know the once victim became the oppressor, but also towards the end, God is saying that his restoration is restoration for both.
for everyone.
Hmm. And we can
Yeah,
never
I think it's full,
understand that.
full circle.
Yeah. Also,
I know.
you're right, we will never be
Trying
able
to
to
wrap my head
understand that.
around it.
Yeah.
Because you think about think about people that are being oppressed in different ways, and looking forward to this day where they'll be vindicated, and all it's like coming into a room. What I just thought about was like maybe having a bully and in school, and then you walk into the principal's office and you're expecting that person to be punished, because he's the bully. I'm just the innocent one. And
Yeah.
then you walk in there and the principal's like, well, I can't really forgive this person if you guys, don't come together and like work it out or something. And you're just sitting there gaslighting, but I thought you're gonna, like it's his fault.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine that, like just having to forgive. And yeah, I just can't. But I guess
Yeah.
that's how God wants it. So
Yes. This is a hard our motivations definitely
yeah.
doesn't go along with God's idea of justice and mercy
Yeah.
together. But I think if we experience, but isn't that what the gospel is? Like when we experience, um, because in reality, you can't really extend mercy if you're not just,
That's true.
right? There's nothing you can extend.
Yeah,
It's
that's
your
that's so true.
you're merciful because you are just. You're right. You're
Yeah.
pardoning all these. So you can't. It has to be both. And sometimes we
Yeah.
push so much for just, but then you can't. But we have a God who's both. You know, just and merciful, and He can extend that mercy because He is a just God. For us, it's like it's so hard to grasp that. Like this is a different. You're in a different realm, God. Like
Yeah. I think it kind of goes back to the good, you're either good or bad that you talked about earlier on. I think
Mhm,
that's all we see, right? Good or bad. But
mhm.
with God, he sees more than that. And so he can be merciful and just because obviously his ways are not our ways. But we just
Yeah.
see two things. You're bad. Yeah, you gotta be punished. And then no,
Yes.
and I think when you're like that, there's really no, you're not capable of being merciful.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. But then, if we realize uh, the message of the gospel, if we realize how much we are on the wrong side, and then
Mm-hmm.
experience mercy that was extended to us, then that's the only time we're able to actually see that here, on earth in a very fallen and broken society and system,
Yeah.
but you're right in pointing out the first part of the restoration is I sat in darkness, I have fallen, I have sinned against Him. Like it's the first realization that we are all in the same, you know, boat of sinfulness and rebellion. No one is like, no one lived a perfect life. And so, because of that, I think sometimes, I don't know, sometimes we feel guilty when we talk about how sinful we are, but there's also a need to be a reminder of how much grace we receive because of our, sinfulness and rebellion, right?
Yeah.
To take us back, how much God saved us. By the
Yeah.
way, okay, if you haven't read the book Just Mercy, that's a really good book by Brian Stevenson.
Oh yeah. I have actually seen the movie. I
You
haven't watched. I
have.
haven't read the book yet. I just saw the movie with my friends.
Yeah. I haven't seen the movie, but I
Do you
have the
know
book
the author
here.
came to SVU for one of our
No.
day of common? How did he even say that thing? Day of common learning. Yes, he came to
What?
give a talk. One of our professors knew him. Yeah,
Oh, lucky you guys.
crazy. I know. I know. We used to get some
Like,
amazing
so did you
people.
see him?
Like, yeah, well, I saw him. I didn't go to talk to him. It was just um, he came and addressed the whole school, or those who were there for the day of
Oh,
common learning.
what?
Yeah, I guess
Oh,
some students got to talk to him though, but then I didn't know about his book, so I
who was
wasn't really
he?
interested.
Yeah, like, who are you? Who are you?
I know, but then afterwards, I was like, I was seeing his name everywhere, and I was like, oh, I know this guy.
Please.
Like, why didn't I go talk
Yeah. Wait, let me grab his book really quickly. I think it's just here. my gosh. What color is Just Mercy? White?
Sorry, what?
See it. Oh, here it is. Gosh.
I
Have
just
to ask
realized that
my
you couldn't
husband.
hear me.
Oh, could you see it though? Were you telling me that you can see the book?
I was no, because I didn't hear what you were saying. I thought you were talking to me. Like, oops, she can't hear me.
No, yeah, I was asking my husband what color is, because you see our books is like color
Oh
coordinated over
yeah.
there.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, what color is Just Mercy? White. I said, white. Yeah, it was really good. He has a lot of stories here. Imagine he moved. Well, anyway, I'm just gonna save it for you and for those who wanted to read it. Go ahead
Yeah,
and read
I'm
it. It's
definitely gonna
very
read. I have it on my
inspiring.
Kindle. I just haven't
Mm,
read it because just the movie alone was heartbreaking, and I know books sort of go deeper. I just
yeah.
I just need some joy right now. I
Well,
know
I
I
think what.
avoid certain books because of that. I just can't.
Mm, yeah, yeah. It's really amazing. It's crazy how people just sometimes God just like pick people. I don't know, for a specific calling. You have to be called to do something, what he did,
Yeah.
and experience a lot of God's grace and mercy while starting that journey. Crazy. Anyway, well, that wraps up our Micah.
We made it through.
Yeah, we made it through. And yeah, we'll think through our next prophet. We're gonna go through all these 12
Yeah.
prophets. Just FYI, people.
Yeah.
12 prophets.
It's interesting. I mean, at first when you said Micah, I was like, I don't know about that.
Me
But
either.
now I'm game. I want to read all of them.
Isn't it crazy? It's so crazy. I didn't even know. I didn't know either. Like, what are we getting ourselves into? But then we
Yeah.
said we don't want to, we said we want to be as authentic as possible and not create some kind of like, like we said we did not premeditate. We're relying so much on the
Right.
Holy Spirit that God will, Holy Spirit will lead us through the process. And that there's so many things that we don't know about the Bible. I just feel like this Bible has been, you know, over, coded in an abusive way without looking
Yeah.
really at the context and the whole story of the book. Um, so yeah, we're getting into that. We're going against that um, trajectory. And
Yeah.
read
That's what
through
I've
it.
always loved about our Bible studies.
Yeah, me too. And also, if it's like shared, like, oh yeah, well, that was a very good point. Like, I learned so much about that, just like pointing that one out. I'm like, I haven't seen that. Yeah. All right. Well, it's a wrap for Micah.
Yay!
Yay.
It
And
was
then
it was a great journey. I learned a lot.
me too. Bye, guys.
Bye.
I'm going to put pause. I think stop.